Side Scrollers is brought to you by you. If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/sidescrollers. It's time for Side Scrollers on YouTube.com with me, Stuttering Craig. I like movies that have sand in them. Wow.
He doesn't like it in his mouth.
And producer extraordinaire, Travis Key.
I don't like the texture in my mouth.
What? And brought to you by you, the G2 community at patreon.com/sidescrollers. And now, broadcasting from our homes, it's time for the number one gaming and entertainment podcast on planet Earth. It's time for Side Scrollers.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, welcome on out to Side Scrollers on YouTube.com and Rumble.com and Twitch.tv. For how long? We don't know. We're not signing your terms of service, Twitch. I'm Stuttering Craig. Welcome to the number one and most important gaming and daily entertainment podcast on planet Earth. Hello, everybody. It's Side Scrollers. It's a one-on-one day. It's Thursday, which means we get to sit down and chat with a good old creator friend who, God, in this case, known for a long time, but very little interaction with each other. So I'm genuinely super excited about today. If you guys are new, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button and subscribe button. We'd love to have you join our little community here as we are live Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Central Time. We have a Rumble account at rumble.com/sidescrollers. We'd love for you to join us. Our goal, as always, is to hit 300 thumbs up per live show. Do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button. That'd be great. And yeah, all that stuff. Quick reminder, tomorrow we will have David Jaffe on the show. That's going to be fun. We're going to be talking Starfield and pronouns and all sorts of stuff. So it's going to be great. So make sure you guys are back tomorrow for that. It's going to be good. But right now, I'd like to introduce a man that, once again, had a long-term distance relationship from, but I'm very excited to get up close and personal. It's the one, the only, in black and white, RazörFist. Hello, buddy.
Like all the classic movies. Thank you for having me on. This is all full circle. I mean, my God, started out on the Screw Attack, and we were front page featured back in the day. Launched us. Launched Movie Bob too, but I forgive you. I'm more impressed with the fact that you did that from a physical standpoint, to be honest. But I don't. But regardless, we had a blast on the old Screw Attack days. I mean, people consider us, or me, whatever, a YouTuber. I have an editor, incidentally. It's kind of a team, but they consider us YouTubers. But honestly, like, back in the day, we started on Game Trailers and Screw Attack. We would post on YouTube and get like 12 views. We'd go on Screw Attack and Game Trailers and get thousands. Yep. And be front page featured on Game Trailers and on Screw Attack. And then I got banned from Game Trailers for saucy jokes.
Oh man. Take it up with Brad Winters, the old GM over there at Game Trailers. Yeah. Man, I'll tell you what, let's go and start there. That was a totally different time on the internet. Like, so for those who don't know, there are people who know Side Scrollers. They don't know anything about my past or my history. So I had this website called Screw Attack back in the day. And before YouTube was this mega corporation, the place where you found content creators on the internet was individual websites. You found them on places like Screw Attack. You found them on places like Game Trailers. And for the most part, Screw Attack was kind of one of the first hubs out the gate for content. And we allowed people to upload their own videos and or post their own videos from YouTube or whatever, because hosting was atrociously expensive. So we didn't really allow uploading till later on. But yeah, that's you were initially an old school G1.
Oh yeah, time. And we got front page featured like every video. Like we did pretty well. We were never like a feature on Screw Attack, but we were always in the mix somewhere. And it was a great community over there. It was freaking awesome, and kind of cut our teeth on it. Actually, you mentioned the black and white. you were talking about how it was a totally different world, dude. The whole reason was back in the day. It's crazy. One day, I'm going to predict this. One day there will be like an ironic retro YouTube corner of YouTube. You know what I mean? Someone's going to go back to the old YouTube aesthetic at some point because people don't understand. You could literally start a YouTube channel with like a $5 webcam that was an utter piece of crap that you bought at a yard sale, which is exactly what I did. And you could literally record your audio with, you could reverse engineer headphones and record, use that as a microphone, and you'd get tens of thousands of views if it was a good video. People didn't give a fuck. It was like, it was recorded at the bottom of the ocean on an answering machine. Give me that shit. Pound it right into my veins. That was exactly how it was. And so the black and white came from that because we had a crappy camera. Okay, so it's a USB camera. It's digital, but it has film grain on it. It's so low quality. It had its own film grain. So we were like, the only way to make this presentable is to go black and white. And that's awesome. That's where it came from. And
now it's kind of your MO, right? It's what people know you for, which is great.
Once we upgraded to glorious 720p later on, it was like, well, now it's like our signature. What the hell? It's kind of like the aviator sunglasses. My first video was reviewing the movie Cobra. So I wore them for that. And then I tried to take them off after that, and people kept being like, "Where's the sunglasses? That's your signature." I was like, I did it for one video. Right. So it wound up just being a thing where I just didn't take them off after a while.
That's spectacular. And isn't it amazing how it just kind of all organically happened? You know, like it's like, we had a sheet of camera. We went black and white. I know I did a Cobra review. I wore sunglasses. Well, now all of a sudden that's your thing. And that's like your trademark. That's how people know you, which is great. Outside of your hot takes and everything. So
I don't know what you're talking about, but it was cool. Like back in the day, I feel like things happen more organically anyways. Nowadays, they'll literally take you aside on YouTube and explain to you exactly how you're supposed to have a successful channel. And
right.
It's rough. I'm not a big fan of what YouTube has turned into. I still watch a lot of stuff on there, but between the copyright kind of restricting the kind of content that can be uploaded, and then the algorithmic strictures as far as I don't put the word election in video titles anymore. You know what I mean? Like as far as that kind of thing, it's really made a milquetoast kind of situation on YouTube that I'm not a big fan of.
Well, there's definitely a self-censorious nature to YouTube now that there wasn't, a decade ago or whatever. It's amazing to kind of see the shift. There's the old running gag of like take the U out of YouTube, and that's kind of what you've delivered here is everything needs to be so polished. What happened was Hollywood came in and YouTube was like, well, we want all the late shows on our stuff, and they're like, well, that's fun and exciting. So they started pushing that, and all the little guys started feeling a little, obviously left out. And I don't know. It's been amazing to kind of see the shift in YouTube, and I don't know if anybody's going to truly be able to compete with YouTube, but there will be alternatives. Obviously Rumble's a good alternative.
You'll see it every now and then. It's Rumble's not the first to come along. You had Odyssey, and before that, VidMe had a pretty good run there briefly before they died. Every now and then you'll see an exodus, and a little alternative will pop up. But it seems like if the timing isn't exactly right and the funding isn't exactly right, look, YouTube doesn't even make a profit. It's a legacy brand. It's a prestige brand. Google owns it because they get to say that they own YouTube. And that opens up other opportunities for like crossover brand deals. And that's where they make their nut, right? They lose money on YouTube so they can make money in other areas. Other platforms don't have the luxury of doing that, so they have to grow more slowly. So you get the basic features of YouTube kind of rolled out in these slow increments. And I feel like when people complain about Rumble, like I get it, you want the quality of life shit, but you have to understand that stuff happens slowly, dude. You remember the early versions of YouTube with like nothing, where like you could literally click on your number of subscribers and see a list. So like if somebody wanted to like viral market to all your followers, they could just do it. Like there was no privacy at all. Like, dude, YouTube, the quality of life stuff happened at a glacial pace. Back it took them forever.
Well, the internet moves too quick for that though now. Like
Speaking of which, dude, when are you planning to age
Me?
What is this? Is this Haitian voodoo going on here? Are you drinking Cleopatra's mummified breast milk? How are you? What's going on?
Yes, it's a lot of breast milk, tons of breast milk.
Holy shit.
It's funny. You go back and you look at me from 15 years ago. It's one of those things where like, unless you look, when you look side by side, oh, you can tell. Oh, good old Craig's age for sure. But you mentioned something going back to the kind of the old YouTube days. I've mentioned this publicly, but I've been very vocal that I want to reacquire Screw Attack. So I sold Screw Attack, and
Yeah.
I want to buy Screw Attack back, but I don't want to relaunch the brand. The only thing I want to do with it is take the brand and release the content in its original format, in its original form, 240p, 360p, 480p as a time capsule, and do it like once per day, and to where in 2024 you're watching something from 2006. So it's this weird, crazy time capsule shit. I think that'd be wicked fun.
I do too. And some of that stuff still plays. People still do top 10 lists of best whatever racing games ever or whatever. Because those videos were huge back in the day.
Yeah.
And didn't you do like retrospectives sometimes of game series and whatnot? And of course, all the other featured content on there. So yeah, absolutely. Like that stuff even plays now, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is allowing my kids the opportunity to see it on the internet, right? Is like, for me personally, there's a giant span of about 10 years of my life that's just disappeared from the internet. And it'd be great for that just to live on. And the idea would be to allow everybody the opportunity to do reactions to it, to where it's never gone again, and
a lot of that stuff was, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of that was never uploaded to YouTube back in the day. Because again, like you were saying, dude, YouTube, there was a time, folks, where when you wanted to watch a video game trailer, you did not go to YouTube. You went to Game Trailers, or you went to Screw Attack, or sometimes you would even go to like Apple Trailers or somewhere else. Like
right.
There were all these hubs where you would actually get the video game trailer, and that was where the agreed upon place was. So like a lot of that early Screw Attack shit, not even on YouTube, never was uploaded to begin with.
No, YouTube was like a bad word at Screw Attack. We were like one of the first gaming alternatives to YouTube. I mean, Game Trailers had a much large audience compared to us, but Screw Attack was the biggest feature on Game Trailers.
Yeah.
So that's how people got to know us from a website perspective. But yeah, man, it was so fun. And allowing people the opportunity to kind of get their start. You mentioned like Movie Bob and Matt Pat, and there's definitely a 6 degrees of separation. If you name someone in the gaming space that's a content creator, they know somebody who got their start on Screw Attack, which is pretty. It's like that's kind of the legacy that I think of Screw Attack. Yeah, we had fun. We had made some fun videos and stuff, but more than anything, it allowed a lot of people to get their start, and I think that's something that I'm proud of, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a simpler time. There were not the swaths of politics crushing you from both sides. Like having a gaming channel in 2023 and trying to avoid politics, it's like doing river dance in a minefield. Like you cannot avoid it. And fortunately, it's like kind of a Plymouth Rock landed on me thing, because I majored in political science, hold for laughter. And I got into talk radio later on. So I started out in broadcasting and stuff, talking about politics. And then I was like, fuck all that shit. Who wants to deal with that? Let's talk about like gaming and hobbies and culture and stuff. Cause I just want to escape. And then 2013 or, Gamergate rolls around, and suddenly gaming becomes massively political at that point,
right.
Between the Sarkeesian thing and then Donald Trump gets elected in 2016, and it just hit gaming like a Mack truck, right? So you wound up, it's like a totally different world now than it was then.
Dude, what's amazing is I have all these, we've seen several instances of, before we went live, we were talking about this girl who's been, all our sponsors have been cast off and all the stuff. There's been several instances, and I've talked about this, where like I don't really talk to anybody from Screw Attack. They've all like excommunicated me from their life, right? Despite having known them for years, worked with them, 8 to 10 hours a day, had them over, been great friends. They've just like, well, I can't be associated with Craig anymore, right? And despite me reaching out, there's no response. And
it's crazy. You know why they won't reach out to it, or they won't respond to your communiques, is because, and this is the hidden secret no one wants you to know. The veterans of the culture war don't want you to know. When you have a private conversation with these people, everything's fine. The world isn't ending, right? Like, okay, I had my differences with Angry Joe,
right?
Very public differences with Angry Joe. Privately, we have never had anything but a cordial word ever, on complete opposite ends of the spectrum, possibly the same end of the autistic spectrum, but the totally different ends of the political spectrum. I'm convinced probably the same thing would happen if I had a conversation with Movie Bob or anybody that I'm on the other side of the aisle of. This, I think, is why cultural revolutionaries, whatever you want to call them, are hitting gaming so hard, is because this was an area where people of all political stripes could connect before. It really wasn't an issue, to the point where in 2016, if you started expressing political beliefs, and I certainly witnessed this, I learned just how much of my audience was actually comprised of people who did not agree with me politically. And it was fine, except that they were really pissed at me. But that's the thing. That's kind of the night and day approach, right? That's what gaming was before. Your politics didn't matter. And if they came out, you know what I mean? You kind of looked the other way. It didn't really matter at all because we just weren't constantly at DEFCON 4. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and I think that's when I go back and I look at my time building Screw Attack, we had exactly 0 conversations about politics. I didn't know anybody's political leanings. Hell, I didn't know my political leanings. I still don't really even know my political leanings. I know how people perceive my political leanings, right? Because I don't think like them, right? But there was never a discussion. And even Gamergate, when Gamergate happens, like we never discussed Gamergate at Screw Attack, like ever. And it's I don't know. It's just fascinating to see this giant cultural shift where there is this giant. You're either with us or you're the fucking devil.
Yep.
And it's that's why I wanted. It's funny, we were talking before. So I left the gaming industry for a year and I was burnt out. I came back and I was kind of like looking around and I was like, man, what is the gaming industry like? And I realized that it's batshit insane. Yeah. Like it's just insane, which is why this show exists. It's meant to be this show that shows regular people with common sense views that they're not insane. That's it. Like it's crazy. It's crazy to.
I don't get what you're saying. If gamers aren't racist, Craig, why is a group of gamers called a clan? Huh? Checkmate, bigots.
Good point. Good point. You white supremacist.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
I know you have your politics are probably a little more reasonable. Mine, folks, have German subtitles.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you do have what is the thing over the O in RazörFist? What's that called?
Umlaut. Yeah.
Umlaut.
That's just a Motorhead reference.
Okay. Well, okay. So let's back up. So you started actually talking about games and all that, and you've kind of
movies actually, but then games and
right, to pop culture, like you talked about the Cobra video and stuff, but you've shifted over time to talking about culture. You mentioned 2016, and I think that's how most people would think of you today. Right? How did that shift happen? Was that just a natural thing where you mentioned you're kind of on your channel, just over time you wanted to kind of talk about these things and you saw that gain traction, or was that just something that, I don't know, kind of walk me through that?
I backed into it on accident. I predicted that Donald Trump would win really early in 2016. And so when he did, everyone was looking for me to then weigh in on everything that happened after. That's really what happened, quite literally. It was like I predicted that he would win very publicly and repeatedly, and I explained very, in as detailed a fashion as I possibly could why I thought that was. And it turned out that I was correct. And so people kind of came back with, okay, well, then what's your take on what just happened? Because as soon as Trump was elected, I was like, okay, he's either going to purge all the intelligence agencies and have a relatively peaceful presidency, or every day is going to be a new drama. It's going to be one of those two things. And of course, it wound up being the latter. So I wound up with years and years of videos to make, basically just reacting to every fresh new manufactured outrage. So that's kind of what happened. And then, of course, I had already talked about, like, I already did a video on gun control, I think, before, which is an issue that I'm passionate about. I wasn't even a gun owner when I made that video, but I've always been passionate about gun rights and the importance of the Second Amendment and of state level gun rights. So I mean, it wasn't totally out of my wheelhouse up until that point, and probably even before that. Of course, the Anita Sarkeesian and Gamergate stuff happened, which was another kind of Plymouth Rock landed on me situation, because for 3 or so years before that, I had been doing a series called The Downfall of Gaming Journalism. Because I don't know if you noticed, well, hell, you worked in the kind of gaming journalism adjacent space. I noticed a change in gaming journalism ahead of Gamergate, several years ahead of Gamergate, where it was like,
yeah,
look, I mean, gaming journalism, let's be charitable to it, was basically advertising for games, right?
Yes.
It was like, here's the game. We love games. Most of our scores are probably going to be on the high side because we're fans of games and we're kind of just advertising them. And so I noticed a little bit more ideology and such starting to creep in. I think possibly what that was, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I think mainstream like Hollywood and entertainment sort of didn't take gaming seriously soon enough. So gaming got huge, bigger than Hollywood. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of bean counters and people who kind of had their messages to push, suddenly they were losing their audience, their captive audience. And they were like, wait a minute, where's this audience going? Realized it was all going to gaming, and then gradually kind of moved to capture first sort of media, which was pretty easy considering most of the media publications in gaming, like all the other media organizations, are in coastal cities. They're in, like, San Francisco, for example. That's IGN or whatever. So it wasn't like they had to look that hard for ideologues, and gradually started to push a little bit more of a narrative, not in a conspiratorial sense, but just gradually pushing an issue. And I think, of course, that reached fever pitch when the whole gamers don't have to be your audience thing popped up in 2014, was it? And it was so obviously coordinated. And then private chats emerged of them literally coordinating the message, right? The journalists literally saying, let's all write these articles in unison, saying gamers don't have to be your audience and what have you. And it was obvious at that point, to me anyways, that that's what was happening. So I did a series on that. And then Gamergate happened. And so it was kind of like the Donald Trump thing. I was ahead of the curve, so people kind of went to me for analysis on it once it happened.
Right. It's been man, that's I mean, it sounds like almost like right place, right time, but you're almost ahead of the right place at the right time.
Sometimes,
right.
Just in those two instances, but it wound up being working out well, because look, I'm never at a loss for an opinion. So if you can get me like a subject that I can sink my teeth into, I can make videos for days. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, and that's at its core, that's kind of what YouTube is. You got to be, when you find somebody who's passionate about something, you generally, you want to connect with them. And I think
one of the reasons I never limited myself to just the one thing. I would probably have 1 million plus sub channel if I had just been the gaming guy or just been the politics guy or just. But like, I kind of at the beginning said, do I want to be the Metallica of YouTube, or do I want to be the Motorhead of YouTube? Like, do I want to just kind of be consistent in what I do and gradually build up an audience, or do I want to like have a big explosion and then flame out and fucking go down in flames.
Right,
So
right.
I took the Motorhead route, and I think I made the right decision.
I think you've done pretty well for yourself, which is great. So
Organically.
yes, organically, it's been a nice rise over time, which has been excellent. You mentioned kind of the political nature. We talked about you referenced Angry Joe. You referenced Movie Bob, who like I said, also got a start on Screw Attack. I have not talked to Bob in probably a decade, but
No.
what's fascinating about, and just to kind of echo what you said, is I've never had a bad conversation with Bob ever, but or Joe, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't talked to Joe personally. We've always been very cordial to each other, but
he's genuinely not a bad dude in
Right.
private at all. He actually gives you advice. He's a pretty nice guy. He's pretty forbearing, that's why I felt bad when I did. So he kind of took some shots at me, whatever. I don't generally make kind of roast videos of people unless I have been like kind of called out, right? I don't like sauntering down drama junction, but I felt bad after I made mine because it was like, oh man, because after I made it, it was like it calmed him down and he suddenly was really nice again, right? I felt bad about it. I offered to take it down, honestly. I felt that bad, but he didn't want to because it would have stirred more drama, and he's probably right.
Right. It's amazing how in this culture that we live in now, and I've struggled with this probably more than most, right? We had this interview with Darkside Phil early on, and
oh god,
and it's been it was like
dude, DSP is like the first competitive gamer I ever like played against ever.
Oh yeah,
like 2006 or something. I can't believe he's still around. DSP is harder to kill than COVID. It is unbelievable. I love that man.
That's what's funny about that is, so we did this interview with DSP, and everybody, it's a common theme. Like, he's this like piece of internet lore now that is constantly just been there. And the meme is that he's this cockroach of the internet. He cannot die. But everybody I speak to is like, I love DSP. I love him. I love his tenacity. And what's funny is during that interview, Keemstar came on during the interview, and he offered, because apparently he offered DSP like 50 grand to do a podcast, and DSP was like, I don't know. And he
DSP, hold on. DSP has the scratch to be turning down 50 grand. Are you shitting me?
No, that's the thing. He doesn't. But anyways, we did this interview. It was 5 hours long. It's probably the last interview he's ever going to do, right? But it was like a 5 hour long interview.
It's like Bob Dylan in that final 70s interview, right?
Right. And it was really fascinating. But what's fascinating about it is that everybody seems to love DSP except for the people who really, really hate DSP, right? Which there are a lot. There are
people who hate that man like Al Qaeda. It is incredible to me.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I just
pretty
love
amazing
that he keeps on keeping on. The dude, it really is Thomas the Tank Engine. It's unbelievable.
He is, as it was coined by in the interview, is that he's still at level 1, and I think that's most like he's never graduated to that second level of content creation. He's been doing the same thing that he's been doing for a decade, 12 years, whatever it may be. So it's
and
amazing.
all that off of like, God, he was only in a few tournaments, right? Like he wasn't even in that many back in the day, but I don't know. He just got out. I remember playing him online on Street Fighter Anniversary Collection for Xbox, because that was the only Street Fighter game that was online for the longest time. And ran into him, and I remember he picked Blanca. I cannot remember if I won or lost. I remember he's pretty good though. He was all right.
Just claim that you won.
I'll just pretend I won.
That's awesome. But it's been amazing to kind of see this cultural shift, and that's gone along with it. And I think that's something that nobody can really look at the gaming space and deny has happened over the years. And you mentioned several kind of kind of bookmarks or parts of the timeline that have been major shifts in the culture of gaming. Do you think it's possible to kind of reverse it all and go back to a place where games are just games and you're not inundated with bullshit politics?
I feel like it's so wrapped up with social media, and social media is so, I've taken to calling it on my show rather, political fight or flight. That's like what it is. It's like they're keeping you in a political fight or flight response in a way. Everything you see on social media, in the news, whatever, it's like death, famine, AIDS, murder hornets, right? Like it's just constantly swarming at you in these fusillades. I feel like that's the whole point of it. So I honestly feel like gaming is just one more rung on that ladder. Like until the culture at large, like kind of dials down this political fight or flight a little bit, you know, until we hit like a political cycle where everyone's disillusioned on every side, or the opposite happens and everyone calms down, I don't feel like it's going anywhere, honestly, because gaming is just a battlefront now in that camp. You know, you can call it whatever you want. And Antonio Gramsci, the Italian Marxist who was jailed by the fascists, he wrote from prison. Like he was basically the guy to really crack the code on, okay, look, Marx told us that capitalism is going to collapse on its own. Not so much. Not really going to happen. Clearly hasn't over 100 years. We're going to have to bring it about. So what we have to do is keep people constantly engaged by politics. We have to remove their escapes. The bread and circuses have to be removed from the equation because, and he stipulated this, one of the reasons America hasn't been, and he said this specifically, one of the reasons America hadn't become, you know, a Marxist utopia or whatever yet was because there was too much to keep people distracted. There was too much entertainment. There were too many things to do outside of it. And while it may not be like that nefarious or conspiratorial of a formulation, there are definitely people who hold to that philosophy. We just talked about Anita Sarkeesian. There's a famous quote from her at one of her events where she said, everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is misogynist, and you have to point it all out at all times. And what is that but a microcosm of what I just mentioned? It's a way of keeping people perpetually outraged and perpetually engaged politically, so they feel they're always under attack. That accomplishes two things. It gets people mobilized. It gets that whole thing going. It prevents also people from ever having that drawdown response where we go back to DEFCON 1. You know what I mean? That's they don't want that to happen.
So, okay, let's talk about going to DEFCON 26. Right? You made a bold prediction in 2016 and you were correct.
Yeah.
We're a year out from a U.S. election, which some people will say that it doesn't matter who's in the White House. Right. They're not the ones pulling the strings to begin with, right? You know, right. But
and in some ways, that's true.
Right. But let's just fast forward. All right. Yeah. A year from now, an election happens. Would you like to make a prediction as to what is going to happen?
Man, there's honestly, we're so early in the primary, that'd be a fool's errand. If you look at how they're stacking up polls wise, you would want to say Trump because he's been ahead of Biden and all of his rivals. But I mean, that was true of a lot of polls in 2020. You know what I mean? We have had such a wacky, and who knows, honestly, with all the indictments and whatnot, if they're even going to let him be on the ballot. Right. So who do you even predict at that point? It may be somebody who's not even in the field right now. There's a lot of people who are noticing. I pointed out it's awfully convenient that the same week Biden announces, hey, I am going to run for re-election, is the same week that all the alphabet agencies, after years of denial, suddenly decide, oh, the Hunter Biden laptop actually is real. And we're going to announce that publicly just to step on Joe Biden's announcement. That's kind of convenient timing, don't you think? Kind of the establishment's way of tapping Joe on the shoulder and saying, look, you've been a lovely figurehead, but no more, buddy. It's all right. We got somebody else lined up. And certainly they're pushing Gavin Newsom, for example, really hard. He's been, I don't know if you saw, he made an announcement like just yesterday where suddenly he's going to come down really hard on looters after how many years of just letting people loot San Francisco stores and bailing looters out of prison. Suddenly he cares about law and order. Gosh, I wonder if he's positioning himself for a presidential run. So yeah, I couldn't really make I don't feel like I can make an accurate prediction, but all things being fair, and we do not live in a fair world, it would be Trump.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say Donald Trump gets his second term. What DEFCON do we go to then?
Oh man. That's what I worry about. And I think Tucker Carlson is kind of onto something, and he's not the only one saying it. I mean, okay, you've thrown everything at this guy. People forget, like, they tried some pretty nasty tricks in 2016 to get rid of this guy between the pussy tape and how many sexual assault allegations were there at the end of the day? Like over 100. I mean, it was lunacy. You know, I feel like the indictments are kind of the modern equivalent of the sexual assault allegations. It's like, well, those didn't work. Let's pile on more indictments, which I think is a dangerous game for them to play because desensitization applies to everything, right? You can see it in the word racist, how it's been devalued, right? Racist back in the day used to kind of mean something. You were like, oh, that guy down the street's kind of racist. Nowadays, it's like, it means nothing. It's like Ramalama Ding Dong. Like, no one fucking cares anymore, except the people who wield it like Thor's hammer, right? So,
what's interesting, and I want to what's interesting about that, right, is I feel, you turn the terms racist and bigot, you hear these thrown out, any sort of phobic, right? You see these terms are just thrown out like they're candy now, right? And you're right, they feel like they've lost all meaning. But I feel like for our generation growing up, they very much did mean something. It meant a lot. Because if you did say, hey, Jeff over there is a racist, you're like, man, I'm going to avoid that guy, right? He's a piece of trash. But I feel like that language was yielded against our generation because it meant so much to us, to where somebody along the lines, and it'd be interesting to go back and retrace the butterfly effect of this, to where somewhere along the line, somebody was like, hey, if you don't do this, you're racist. Or if you don't do this, you're homophobic, or whatever it may be. And somebody was like, oh shit. And then the slope happened. And that's where the slope kind of happened. And the devaluing of language and those words in particular.
Oh yeah, I never want to hear the words slippery slope and fallacy paired together ever again. You've seen how it starts and the ripple effect on how many issues at this point. I mean, look, gosh, they're already talking about they've already added minor attracted persons to the trans flag and stuff like that. I was warning a couple of years ago. I was like, if you look at the ACLU, right, the American Civil Liberties Union, generally they'll be about 20 years ahead of the mainstream kind of liberal perspective. And about 20 years ago, they were defending NAMBLA in a court of law, for free, right? In this it was based on free speech, but they were doing that.
What is
kind of warning people?
What is that? What is NAMBLA?
Oh God. I wish what was it? Dennis Miller said the North American My Balls Lack Attachment Society. No, it's the North American Man Boy Love Association. It's a pedophilic organization. Lovely organization. They defended them for free in a court of law. And the thing that I worried about is 20 years before gay marriage was kind of normalized, they were on that. 20 years before, every major kind of step in the road, they tend to be kind of the Paul Revere of that issue. I warned years ago, and unfortunately it looks like it's kind of happening. A little bit of at least an attempt. I don't think it's working. I think it really is a bridge too far. Honestly, you're seeing that in Florida. You saw that in Virginia, right? With Glenn Youngkin getting elected after all that controversy with your parents. Your parents don't really have any possession of their kids. The state owns them. Like Terry McAuliffe shot himself in the foot with all that. And all that was wrapped up in the whole kind of trans minor attracted persons, all that gross shit. It was just, that's what I worry about really, is the slippery slope definitely is undefeated at this point.
I'm just gonna look. I don't do this minor attractive person thing.
Ugh.
Like I don't say that shit. I just call them for what they are, right? And even pedophiles is too nice, right? You want to fuck children. That's fucked up, right? That's really. I have no as a father,
and you've seen it coming. If you pay attention to what the ACLU was doing for years, you could see that absolutely coming. And that's the thing. If you want to know where they're going to go, just look at what the ACLU was doing 20 years ago. That's what I worry about, honestly.
That is that's crazy, man. It's like you can't really dress that up. You can't really slap lipstick on that pig, man. That's pretty rough. It's fucked up. So God, okay. So let's go the other side, right? The world flips out if Trump wins. What if Joe Biden, this hypothetically, let's just say he runs again. Let's say Joe Biden wins the presidency in 2020.
You mean Obama's fourth term? Yeah. If he's alive, I mean, my God, this guy is held together with duct tape and fishing twine. That's the main thing that I'm concerned about. Look, he's a figurehead for much more radical elements behind him. It's pretty obvious at this point. Like, Joe Biden's the guy who said marriage is between one man and one woman, and now he's speaking at like trans rallies and shit. Like, he's given a script. Like, these are not his positions, if he ever indeed had a position. So I honestly just see it as more of the same, and probably if it doesn't kick off in the next year, there are some people who are predicting that it will. Probably full-blown land war with us and Ukraine and Russia. And God fucking, I certainly hope it stops there, but it's clear they're leaning in that direction.
What's funny is I have several friends who were pretty high level military folks. And they told me, like, and this was last year, they're like 2024 war with China. That's what they said. They're like, it's going to happen, war with China in 2024. Well,
I mean, and look, that's not completely outside the realm of possibility. I have talked about this. I did a video called China, the Paper Dragon, where I talked about their position on Taiwan. But if you're China and you're worried about the results of the next election in the US and in Taiwan, you get to use the results of a Taiwanese election, if you want, as pretext to invade. Kind of in the same way that Putin used, there's Russians there, right? Like, that's these people want to be restored to Russia. This was essentially the justification. China could do the exact same thing with Taiwan, and probably would, because there's elections in Taiwan that are scheduled for 2024. So that's, I actually could absolutely see that. I've talked about that on several occasions.
Do you think, just based off of everything that you see in the space, do you think that World War III will happen, or a nuke will be used?
If you keep pushing a nuclear power into a corner, that is absolutely something you have to consider would happen. I don't see it being used against the United States, but perhaps on Ukraine, you would hate to see it, right? You would absolutely hate to see it. They're the people my only regret in the Russia-Ukraine situation is that they both can't lose, but I hate what's happening to the Ukrainian people. Like, they, and I guess the Russian people bordering, but the Ukrainian people are honestly the only sympathetic party at all in the entire conflict. And I feel horrible for them. And of course, they would be the ones that would suffer from that. So you would hate to see that happen. That's why this game of brinksmanship is bad all around. All essentially to protect what is a glorified money laundering operation for Western elites in Ukraine to a large degree. That's just repulsive to me on every level.
So you're telling me that there's some shit going on behind the scenes that's meant to be covered up by war? What?
No. John McCain got up off his deathbed to go instigate this war in Ukraine because, he just really likes the Ukrainian countryside. That's the last major diplomatic trip he made before expiring, by the way. That is a lot of people, the significance of that fact escapes them.
What a world we live in.
Yeah.
But let's talk about something not in this world. You yesterday, was it yesterday? We saw the Mexican alien thing happen down there. What are your thoughts on aliens? Do you think aliens exist?
Bro, I have to, it's like the other day, so I was like, what the fuck is going on in the world? And I was like, you want to know how fucked up absolutely everything is? The Mexican government literally held an open casket funeral for an alien corpse, and no one gives the faintest fuck. No one cares. Like, a big deal. More aliens from Mexico. Shit. I've seen people shitting in the street in San Francisco that look freakier than that fucking thing. Fuck that. Like, seriously, that's how people are responding to this.
It's
how
pretty
convenient,
awesome.
how convenient is it that it just so happened to look like exactly like aliens in all the movies?
Right.
I'm pretty sure I saw like a second grader still slapping paper mache on that fucking thing. Oh man. That was, I don't know about that one. I saw a great meme where someone was like, I believed in aliens until the government said they exist.
Right. I think that's what the most fascinating thing about all this is.
Yeah.
As I've gotten older, the one thing that I know for sure is that I don't know shit. Right. You know, I think that's I'm smart enough to realize that
That's the first step to wisdom, bro.
Well, I mean, okay, so obviously the Mexican Peruvian aliens from the mine that were dug up and all that, whatever. But do you feel like there is a that we're not alone in this galaxy universe, whatever out there, or are we it? This it?
I err more on the side of it's unlikely that there's anyone close enough to reach us if there is life in the universe, just because of how remote the possibility is that our perfect planet with the perfect amount of H2O and the perfect amount of sunlight and the perfect amount of darkness and that was not a very likely proposition from a probability standpoint. So I tend to err on the side of we're not necessarily alone, but we're definitely alone in our neighborhood. I don't think there's anyone particularly close. I don't think anyone could reach us even with some wacky fucking outer space technology, personally. That I could be totally full of shit, but that's just my gut.
I think the conversation about aliens is so, like, for me, I love talking about aliens. I love talking about the idea of aliens, right? The idea that maybe they're from space, maybe they're in the ocean, who knows, right?
Maybe they're from Guatemala,
right? Maybe they're this fucking big, right? Maybe they're fucking giants, who knows, right? It's just such a, it's this.
I guess they did a DNA analysis on it. They said,
yeah,
is that what they said?
Yeah.
What was it like? What did they compare it to? Is it similar to anything, or what the fuck?
I thought I saw something like 36% of it was not human DNA or something. I don't know. I don't. It was some weird number, but
wow.
And they did a X-ray scan on it, and you saw the bones, and it had a ring on, and I don't know, man. It was there's a lot of questions associated with Peruvian, Mexican.
Wow,
aliens.
it's a happily married alien. Holy shit!
that would have been awesome if they're like, look, it was married. Like,
wow, so that makes one of them.
Oh man. So are you a big conspiracy guy?
I don't even call them conspiracies anymore. I just call them spoilers. Fuck it.
What's the conspiracy? I love asking everybody this.
Oh,
what is the conspiracy that you think is the most underrated conspiracy that doesn't get its due in the conspiracy world?
I've talked about Joseph McCarthy and the infiltration of the State Department by communists. I found it really interesting that Joseph McCarthy, when he starts the Army McCarthy hearings, his biggest supporter from the military and kind of from the political establishment was Forrestal. Forget if he was a general or an admiral, really high-ranking military guy. He dies under somewhat suspicious circumstances in the same hospital that Joseph McCarthy dies in, again under suspicious circumstances, both of like a heart kind of related issue, I believe. By the way, the KGB love to use poisons that mimic heart attacks. and he turned up on hit lists from Joseph Stalin later on and things like that. I think there's a good chance Joseph McCarthy did not drink himself to death. He may actually have been assassinated in his hospital bed. They both died at the same hospital of roughly the same thing, and it was really sudden in both cases. Because like Joseph McCarthy starts the hearings, and like by the end of the decade, he's dead.
Wow. I've never even heard that before.
And it turned out the communist agents that he accused, for the most part, were actual communist agents. We got the Venona papers published in the 90s. And then, of course, the KGB archives were open to everyone. And it turned out that the main guy that he accused was Alger Hiss, it did turn out he was a communist double agent. And he had actually influenced our policy on China, which is why China is communist today, because we stopped supporting Chiang Kai-shek. So they not only were communists in our government, they were actually influencing our foreign policy toward China.
I've never even heard that before. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
I did a video called Hollywood Was Always Red that touched on some of this stuff. That's one video that I've been planning for a long time, is the Joseph McCarthy video. I haven't done anything on him yet. There's a number of really interesting books on him. He wasn't perfect. I think he hurt his own case sometimes, but he was right more than he was wrong. On the subject of communism, anyway.
So okay, let's really get demonetized on YouTube. Let's go.
Right? I think we just did, bro.
Let's do this. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna list off some conspiracy theories, and you tell me what you think of each. Okay.
Okay.
But before we do, since we're going to get demonetized, do us a favor. Hit the subscribe button so you can come back tomorrow. Hit the thumbs up button if you guys are tuning in for the first time. And if you want to ask RazörFist a question yourself, you can send in a super chat, and we'll get it at the end of the show, which is good. We have several of those. We'll get those towards the end. Okay, here we go. All right. Some of my favorites. JFK. Who killed JFK?
I'm of the opinion that it's kind of suspicious that Lee Harvey Oswald goes to Russia, meets with the KGB. They turn him down. He's so insistent that he be allowed entry into the KGB as a double agent that he attempts suicide. Then the KGB decides that they're going to meet with him. They're like, oh, this guy's serious. Shit. Well, okay, we'll meet with him. Because he had been in the military, right? He had communication codes and shit. Turns out he doesn't know anything they want. There's a lot of yada, yada, yada here. We don't know what happens in the second KGB meeting. Suddenly, he decides, oh, I've had enough of communism. No reason given. By the way, I've already got a communist Russian wife. I'm going to go ahead and return to America. No reason given whatsoever. I'm disillusioned. And of course, immediately he goes to the streets of, I think it was Miami. He goes to Miami and starts handing out pro-Fidel Castro propaganda. So clearly that was a very short change of heart. And he tries to infiltrate a local anti-communist group, probably to assassinate them. Then he attempts to assassinate a military official, almost succeeds right before he kills JFK. I think one of two things happened, because his wife testified that Lee Harvey Oswald kept being on the phone, right? And she didn't know who he was talking to right before the JFK assassination. Either he had a handler with the KGB and they put it up to him, and meaning that the Soviets actually killed the sitting US president, or they were kind of like, all right, whatever, dude. If you can kill somebody high up, you can be one of us, like half bullshitting. And then no one was more surprised in the world when he actually did. I am of the opinion that Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK, either with cooperation from the KGB, for certain after meeting with the KGB. And yeah, that's my opinion. I don't think it was a CIA, grassy knoll, whatever the fuck. I never bought any of that personally. By the way, most of the redactions in the Warren Report papers and whatever happened as a result of LBJ releasing a memo like the day after the assassination, or a couple days after, saying, okay, any mention of Lee Harvey Oswald's associations with Russia or the Soviets or communism have to be removed. All of them have to be removed. His thinking, and it's not completely outside the realm of possibility, was that he was worried that it would kick off World War III. because people would think that the Soviets killed the president, and now everyone would want a fucking third world war. So he ordered that removed. So a lot of that black shit that's excised is actually references to communism, because he had a lot of connections to communism.
Have you ever been to the 6th floor, the museum in Dallas?
No, I haven't. I've been through Dallas a couple of times, but never there.
Oh man, it's pretty fascinating, and they get into some of the conspiracy stuff there. They don't.
I
they don't
love
shy away from it.
I have to say, even though I don't believe in a lot of it, I love the conspiracy stuff at the same time. I love learning about it.
Yeah, I'll say for me, having seen the shot and knowing, I would say it'd be if he shot him twice in the head. He's one of the most remarkable marksmen in history. And if he did it by himself with a bolt action rifle, I mean, it's a spectacular shot if he did it, shooting it from that far away. But
there's a lot of countervailing. There's a lot of like, oh, he wasn't a very good shot in the military. Not true. He qualified as a sharpshooter, and then the second time he qualified as a marksman. So he was actually okay as a shot. And the Carcano is a pretty accurate rifle too. It's not, and from, I mean, I don't know the range or whatever, but it's definitely not impossible. The other thing that people point out, like the JFK movie has some pretty serious disinformation in it. The movie actually kind of owns itself if you watch it, where they're like, you think that he could have made that many shots in that number of seconds? Okay, I'm going to time you. And then they time it. And they're like, see, 5 point whatever seconds. It couldn't have been done. But of course, if you watch the movie, it's actually the exact amount of time. It's actually correct. They actually disprove their own argument. But the truth is that if he already had it in battery, like in other words, if he had already brought the bolt back and put the round in a battery, then he absolutely could have made that. Right? Because it's that many shots. If he was already loaded up, then he had more time. Right. Because he didn't have to. When people do this test, they tend to include the original, pulling back of the bolt and bringing it back into a battery. But he didn't have to do that. He would have already been set, because that's what you're supposed to fucking do. It's a bolt action rifle. Right.
I don't know. It's an amazing conversation. And it's an amazing point of history that obviously I live in the North Texas area. So for me, it's one of those things that Dallas will always be tied to, that's where the president was killed. And
also a great Saxon song. I don't know if you like heavy metal, but the Dallas 1 PM killer heavy metal.
All right. Nice. All right, let's go on to another conspiracy theory.
Yes, sir.
All right. Did Epstein kill himself?
No. What the fuck? Don't come the fuck on. Yeah, absolutely. He hung himself from a bunk bed that was shorter than he is. Yeah, absolutely. He pulled a David Carradine. What the fuck?
All right.
I mean, Christ, didn't one of the inmates just come out and go, yeah, basically he got fucking murdered? Like, come on.
It's this is so freaking funny. I love it. Okay.
And then Ghislaine Maxwell, the only woman in history to be convicted of trafficking girls to absolutely no one, apparently. A great big long list of nobody.
Isn't that amazing? That's just absolutely amazing that there's this book that's in that has all these names, and nobody's gonna there's not even the media isn't even pressing for this. It's like, don't you want to know who these freaking predators are? Oh my God, it's amazing.
Well, it's more of it. Look, it's in the hands of an alphabet agency now. Now it's blackmail material. It's way more valuable as blackmail material than it ever would be released to the public. Right? Because now everybody on that list, they have control over. I mean, think of it from their perspective.
Yeah, of course. All right. Let's go.
Apparently, there's supposed to be video and whatever from the island and shit. That's all in the hands of the FBI, or they claim that they lost it. I think was the last thing I heard. But
convenient. All right. And this is this is kind of touchy because we just passed the anniversary of it. But 9/11, inside job or no?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. I haven't looked into it a lot. It doesn't. I do find it suspicious about, was it Building 7 collapsing? I do find that a little suspicious, although you can possibly explain it because there were buildings in the radius that were hit with so much debris that they wound up collapsing over the following weeks, right? Like there were whole buildings and shit around it that had to be demolished. So I guess you could explain it on that level. I'm gonna have to put a big question mark on that one. I'm not so sure. I'm sort of ambivalent on that one.
Yeah. And let's go to our most recent conspiracy that's out there, and talking about the coof. The rise.
I mean, what's even conspiratorial about it? We know it came from the Wuhan lab. We know that they admitted it.
Okay.
We know that we funded the gain of function research. We know that. We know that even if it wasn't released intentionally, and this is something that people don't even think about, even if nobody released it intentionally, even if the initial leak was accidental, after the point where Xi Jinping declared that all domestic flights within China had to stop, but international flights, those can keep right on humming in and out of China. At that point, that's deliberately releasing COVID out into the rest of the world. Now, granted, by that point, probably the cat was already out of the bag, because that was pretty well, that was at least a month into after we saw videos of people seizing up and falling down on the ground and all that shit we saw in late 2019. But at that point, it becomes an intentional act. I'd love anyone to explain how it wouldn't be. I mean, if you can shut down domestic flights within China, why couldn't you shut them down outside of it?
I think the thing for me about COVID as a whole is that I think for a lot of people, that was their moment where they're like, none of this seems right. None of the reaction to this seems right. And there was that initial 2-week period, the 2 weeks to slow the spread, and like things are getting scary, and here we are, everyone's
which if that had been all it was, I think most people would have been on board with it, right? If it literally had just been a lockdown for 2 weeks, okay, whatever, who cares? We'll get on with but classic case of what's the Reagan quote? There's nothing so permanent as a temporary government program. That's kind of what happened there.
Right.
We were 2 years into 2 weeks to slow the spread.
Yeah, and to see the mental, and that's the one thing that is not talked about enough with this whole thing is the mental aspect and how people have just been destroyed mentally based off of, look, if you want to wear a mask, it's a fashion statement, that's awesome. Do your thing. But we're at a point now to where we have studies on that these masks do nothing. And it's just so, I'm an anti-masker. No, it's like, no, just give me I'm pro my face. How's that? And it's amazing.
I'm pro my immune system for
right.
Like shit. But what is it? What is my immune system here for? You know what I mean? At some point it needs a workout. Jesus.
It's amazing. We talk about the mental aspect of that. I remember going into a big box, I think it was Target or something. I went into Target, and it was, I don't know, 6 months into the whole like mask craze. Everyone's got to wear a mask all the time. And I was like, no, I'm good. And I remember taking it off and walking in, and I had so much anxiety.
Yeah, you think
it.
People are looking at you. You get like a little social anxiety disorder going on.
And what I found was people were like, hey, good for you.
Right.
I wish I could do that. And it's like, well, then do it. And I remember I was talking to some lady, and she's like, I really wish. I was like, just do it. She was like, and she like took it off slowly, and then she was like, oh my God. And it was like seeing the light for the first time. It was fascinating to kind of see that in real time with this poor, soccer mom in Target. It's crazy. So
the best one is the barking lunacy of driving along and seeing someone in their car with the windows rolled up with a mask on alone.
Yeah. Which there are still people.
That is one step removed from hearing voices, folks. I'm sorry. That is insanity.
And the people outside walking their dogs with their mask on by themselves, like walking down the side. It doesn't make sense to me. Nothing about it. Like I'm a statistical guy. I like to look at numbers, and I look at that and I'm like, man, have you been destroyed that much? And the answer is yes, they have been destroyed that much. And it's honestly sad. It's honestly sad to see. All right. Now this is something that I'm actually very excited to talk to you about. Michael Jackson.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I pissed off the entire internet with that one.
So I'm a big Michael Jackson fan. I think Michael Jackson's music is some of the best ever. And it was kind of upsetting when, well, I don't know, I think it was one of the Jonas Brothers, like named him, or someone recently named themselves the King of Pop recently. Did you hear that?
And hasn't Beyonce been like Queen of Pop?
But walk me through that, because there's these amazing documentaries about, Michael Jackson was this, Michael Jackson wasn't this. And I believe that you can shift and manipulate information to how you want it to fit your narrative, right?
Yeah, documentaries are so unreliable on that front, dude.
Right.
It's it's like emotional manipulation theater. I don't know. You've probably seen documentaries on other subjects where it's just like you get about halfway through and kind of it's starting to not pass the smell test, even though the emotional manipulation is still there. There's a lot of that with Michael Jackson. The Michael Jackson case is interesting. There's so many like misnomers and misconceptions. There's so much misinformation around the Michael Jackson case, right? Like you'll get a lot of variants of, okay, he was acquitted of 14 counts, including 4 lesser misdemeanors in 2003. But why'd he settle that case in 1993? He must have been guilty then, right? That you get a lot of that. And of course, that is itself a misportrayal. The 2003 case, because of a California legal statute allowing for 1108 or evidence of prior bad acts to be admitted into court, essentially the 1993 case, which was settled, was illegally tried in court up to and including the mother of the 1993 accuser literally walking into the courtroom and testifying. So basically they got to try 2 cases at once. Actually, they tried more than that. All those supposed victims that people talk about in between, the 10 different boys who all accused him and all that, the utter BS, like the youth group leader guy who claimed that he had been touched outside of his jeans, like just the goofy shit. All that was heard in a court of law, and it was laughed out of the courtroom. In fact, this is another thing people don't know about Michael Jackson's case, is that it was scheduled for a certain period of time and actually ended almost 2 months early because the jury just realized how full of shit it was. And most of the evidence that you'll hear whenever people say, well, what about this? What about that? Like, for example, you remember being a kid, dude, back in the day when that news broke in 93 about the kid and, oh, they took pictures of Michael Jackson's naked body, and right? That was bloody murder headlines back in the day. I remember that. And that was supposed to be the smoking gun. But it turned out that in 2003, they actually had access to that evidence. And the prosecutor decided not to admit it because the kid in 93 actually didn't correctly identify Michael Jackson's genitals, right? He claimed that he was circumcised when he wasn't. And we have his death certificate now, so we know that he wasn't. So there was just there's so much misinformation around that case. But the biggest thing would be people think one case is legit and the other one maybe not. Who knows? Maybe the 2003 case was weak. Maybe they were just extorting him. But I think 93 might actually be weaker on the whole. The other thing is, of course, the reason why he settled the 93 case. A lot of people don't know why that was. And I didn't, honestly, for a long time. That always seemed somewhat suspicious to me, like as a kid and a young adult hearing about it. But what really happened was, again, kind of California's shitty legal code comes to the rescue. apparently in California, when you sue someone in civil court, right? So for just damages or whatever, you can actually have that civil case ahead of the criminal one. So if somebody gets accused of sexual abuse, then you can convene a civil trial ahead of the criminal one. So basically the person has to defend themselves twice, meaning they basically have to give their whole defense away the first time. Meaning if Michael Jackson defends himself in 93, like saying, oh, well, I wasn't there on that particular day. Here's my itinerary for the day. I can prove I wasn't there. Well, now in the second criminal case, the prosecutor can just say, oh, hey, by the way, we changed the date, right? They can literally change their whole. So Michael would have been given away his whole defense. So rather than give that away, he settled the civil case. And as a term of that, he said, you can cooperate with a criminal case. We'll go forward with that so I can defend myself in criminal court and get clear of this. But what happened was once the family got the money, they took it and fucking ran, and they stopped cooperating with police because that basically was they didn't give a shit about any of that. So,
man, I think when you look at Michael Jackson, just his life, right? And you look at his childhood, he is such a product, and you see this countless number of times in Hollywood and entertainment where you have these kids who grew up in the entertainment industry and they later went on to do horrible things in hopes of essentially having a childhood, right? You got Michael Jackson, Drew Barrymore, Amanda Bynes, Britney Spears, all these people who have been broken over the course of their life.
And in the case of Michael, somewhat physically abused by his dad, little bit, like apparently when they were rehearsing as the Jackson 5, he would whip the kids to get them to do their shit. And, there was some physical abuse involved, maybe not as bad as it's portrayed sometimes. Like, I feel like Joe Jackson sometimes gets the short end of the stick, but it was definitely he was a stern disciplinarian for sure. And that definitely has an effect when you're a kid who doesn't even really get to have a childhood. And now if you try to have a childhood, you get whipped, that's going to fuck you up in some way. There's no way you're going to have a normal kind of development process.
Yeah. It's amazing to kind of see how you talk about things that in Hollywood, the entertainment industry, how they just literally eat, just not literally, but just the childhoods that are taken away from growing up the entertainment space. And it's sad to watch. It's sad to watch. And there's countless examples of it. Over the years for sure. But okay, let's go and get to some super chats. How long do we have you, buddy?
Whatever, I'll hang out.
Nice. Let's go and get to some super chats here. And if you guys have questions for RazörFist, that you guys I've been keeping an eye on them and going to bring up some really good talking points. So we'll just hit them as we go. So Matthew says, hey guys, loving the stream. Did Game Life want to join Screw Attack or was it vice versa? And Razor, thanks for turning me on to Robots with Ray Guns. He makes great music. And also an Arizonian.
I didn't know he was from Arizona. That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, synthwave guy.
Do you remember Game Life? Do you have any idea? Do you recall who these people were?
Name rings a distant bell.
It's a very distant bell. So Game Life was a group of people. I would say the two main hosts had mental issues. And it was 2006 or 7, probably late 2006. They came out and they made this like homegrown like video where it's like, this is Game Life and all the gaming news that you care about. And they're shooting over their shoulder on like a DS screen. And it's,
wow.
It was really poorly done, but they kind of blew up and they went viral. And in 2006, that was a big deal. They got passed around on Kotaku and Destructoid and all these websites at the time. And MTV came calling. And they were like, hey, we saw you guys blow up. There's got to be something to you. There's a novelty here. And they actually signed them to a deal to work with them. Now, the Screw Attack connection was we reached out to them to work with I reached out to them, being like, hey, just like I did with a lot of people, back in the day, just reached out with, where there was James or, Awesome Video Games, whatever. I reached out to them and I was like, hey, do you guys want to work together somehow? Because I was like, we'll kind of see where this goes. And and their response to me was no, you're too small for us. And it was so good. So it turns out that the host, the main host, I think his name was Andrew, he actually got in trouble because it was shortly after the Virginia Tech shooting. And he threatened a girl that if she didn't go out with him, it was going to be another Virginia Tech all over again.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That is spectacular.
Yes. So
God damn, who else did you almost feature? Was there going to be like Chris Chan exclusive videos? Shit.
That was we almost
had Ted Bundy there for a minute. I don't know.
Hey, the shell was pretty bare back in the day. Whoever,
right.
So the shelf. So Lance came in and says, how can DSP have so much and so little pride at the same time?
I don't know, but God bless him.
Jeff says, did you see DSP react and monetize 9/11?
What? When did this?
I'm guessing it happened on 9/11. I'm guessing.
Oh, that is hello.
Could you? Oh my God! I'm just imagining this. Like, they changed all your notifications on screen to be explosions or play. It's like donate $20 and you get an explosion. Donate 50, a building will fall.
Oh my God!
Oh my gosh! Alex says Razor pulls absolutely 0 punches, never misses.
Godspeed.
Troy came in and says, "Hey guys, I have a question for you two. Did you have any thoughts about Blade DeVille, which is created by Raging Golden Eagle?"
Yeah, that's kind of I don't know if they consider themselves affiliated with the Iron Age, but that's definitely part of that new wave of independent creativity. It's a comic kind of in a manga style. And Raging Golden Eagle, great, big fan. But yeah, definitely cool kind of part of this new wave of independent creativity. I'd love to see it.
Let's talk about that for a minute. You mentioned the Iron Age, and you've seen a lot of independent creators essentially creating alternatives to the mainstream stuff that's out there. Whether it's, I don't like how this comic is going with like Eric July, so I'm going to make my own, right?
Yes.
I don't like the way movies are presented in Epicverse. They're making their own thing. I don't like this graphic novel, RazörFist. Creating their own thing.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Talk about that process. And what was it like where you're like, I'm going to do my thing and I'm going to see if there's an audience for it. And so far, there's been a tremendous response of that. Yes, there absolutely is an audience that is absolutely over kind of the mainstream garbage that's being thrown out there.
Yeah, I personally am a big advocate of, if you find yourself having to ask permission to do a thing that you want, the answer is probably no. So stop fucking asking permission. Just do it. Just do it. Get better at it. Be your own worst critic. Continue to grow at it. Create. It's not enough to just criticize the culture, is my argument. I think it's great that there are channels that are calling out Disney on their dog shit, or Warner Brothers, or all the foibles in the entertainment industry, especially today when it's so cringe and ideological. Like, I think all that stuff is great, but I think you also, at the end of the day, have to edify entertainment that isn't beholden to that, and possibly produce some of your own if you're so inclined. It's arguably more important to be a member of like the independent media that covers that stuff. Like Iron Age Media popped up because I sort of rattled off the nomenclature of Iron Age just to describe this age of creativity. My rationale being, it's not as pretty as gold or bronze, but we hammer it the fuck out, right? It's kind of a back to basics, just rock and roll. Just do this. Publish it yourself if you have to. Network. And it seemed to inspire a lot of people. Eric July, of course, was already making I Saw Him, which is rad. I'm overjoyed at his success. And I just announced my Western comic. We did our Indiegogo for that. It blew past my wildest expectations, raised like 360 grand for this thing. And it's gothic Western with a strong sort of biblical theme to it. And really drawing from my sort of background in the church and such. And so it's really cool to see people that are able, it's the kind of thing that probably wouldn't be made if I was working in Hollywood, right? Like it's too ratifying of, it has a binary morality to it. It's the kind of thing you probably couldn't get made in Hollywood if you had connections. There it is.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of thing. It's kind of like a pulp vigilante Avenger in the Old West, sort of an idea. But there's been just all these awesome projects. I mean, from ISOM to, I even saw Shadiversary wrote a book, and I had already written a couple of little pulp novellas before that, a little fantasy noir series that I've been doing called Night Vale. That's been way more successful than I ever imagined it would be. And it just keeps right on rolling. I just think people who have the capacity and can create should, and people who are passionate about this independent stuff need to cover it and network it around it and share it with people. Because, bro, look at the sad, sorry state of Star Wars. Fuck. I was just thinking the other day, a new Indiana Jones movie came out, and I already fucking forgot that thing. I think most people already did. You know what I mean? It used to be that kind of thing would be an actual event. Now it's, it's 2023. Indiana Jones literally has bigger tits than Lara Croft. He's like 90 years old. I feel like I'm watching Jurassic Park half the time. And this is the state of modern entertainment. Make something better. You can't do worse. I guarantee you.
Did you get a chance to watch any of the Nintendo Direct today?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't even know there was one today.
Yeah. They had one today, and they announced some interesting stuff.
Was that what the Metroid memes were about? I saw those earlier.
There was no Metroid announced.
That's why the memes were out. They were like, the hope is dashed.
Right. I think a lot of people were hoping for like a Metroid Prime 2 remastered, or the announcement of Metroid Prime 4, because that's been kind of an ongoing thing. But they announced there was a guy in my chat who was like, this is so, you hear the lazy and uninspired, right? And there was a game, and like, it's a stupid, silly game, but there was a game, it was like a trombone simulator where you're playing like a there's a game about that. There's a game where you catch fish and you turn them into sushi, and it's like a sushi market simulator. Like,
right.
I don't think those games are lazy and uninspired.
No.
Right. I think there's been a ton of creativity that people have been able to create visions that they want,
I'm waiting for that to hit gaming harder, the Iron Age kind of spirit. Because I think there's some aspiring game developers out there who have some talent, and thanks to developer tools getting a little cheaper and being a little bit more manageable to make your own independent thing. Like, I'm waiting on that, honestly. And I've seen some people announce some things, but it would be really cool to see that move forward, honestly.
You mentioned the game tools being, the engines to build these things being a little cheaper, a little more affordable.
Unless it's Unity.
Unless it's Unity. Bingo. Right.
Then they'll go back to the Battle of Hastings to fucking charge you royalties, for fuck's sake.
It's amazing. Don Parker says, how's your boy Sebastian Gorka?
Yeah, I was just on his show. It was great.
I'm not familiar with Sebastian.
I periodically guest on his show.
Nice. Lance says, hey, RazörFist, big fan and also Arizona resident. It's almost nighttime Nightmare Arcade season. May I suggest Faith, the Unholy Trinity?
Not a bad idea.
All right. And Emperor Creatine came in and says, hey, now, 9/11 was a national tragedy. I walked through blood and bones in the street of Manhattan trying to find my brother. He was in northern Canada. I don't know.
Little Norm Macdonald joke there.
Ryan says, what would you say about the theory that your fists are actual razors, but you wear gloves to hide these biomechanical blades?
I'm transhuman. You caught me.
Real question. Did you produce the guitar for your vid's intro song?
No, I wish. No, it was I use a song by a little known Japanese guitarist, Hideaki Nakama, who was in one of my favorite bands back in the day. It's kind of like the Japanese Yngwie Malmsteen. Dude is just rad as shit.
Nice. Big Pile of Puke came in and says, hey, Razor, watched vlogging through history's response to his Lincoln American Dictator video. I'm wondering if you watched that. No offense, but he destroys your arguments. Big fan, though.
It was a whole controversy for a while there. I did watch it, actually. I found it kind of interesting that he opened up with, if you can't make an argument in under an hour, you don't have an argument. And then he spent 3 hours on my video. He was a little scatterbrained. I have addressed some of the more prominent arguments. Actually, I did in a live setting, incidentally, on a podcast already. But maybe in the future, I'll make more of a lengthy rebuttal. I honestly don't really think it was worth it because most of it was kind of bad faith arguments.
GK came in and says, I'd love to hear about, and this is actually, I wanted to get into this, I'd love to hear more about Razor's charity work over the border. Something internet advocates never do. So yeah, let's talk about that. You know, I guess I'm guessing this is something you're passionate about, something you've done in the past. We'll talk about your charity work.
I tend to do either mission trips or volunteer trips in different countries, sometimes in this one. I used to do it every summer. Now I tend to do it every other. Been to a bunch of different places. I mean, I've been to, like, I don't know, maybe 30 of the 50 states now, doing that. You know, food banks. I remember one time we cleaned up this old kind of Catholic school that was super run down and like falling apart in downtown Cincinnati. Did some missions work in Mexico, which I talked about in my Why We Need the Wall video. That was an eye-opener because I don't think you can really kind of weigh in on the border problem unless you've kind of seen both sides of it. Because you don't realize until you get down there how bad the open border is for Mexico. Like, it keeps shitty, corrupt assholes in power in Mexico. It's basically the border with Mexico and the US is being held open and deliberately kept porous, so that corrupt assholes who are enthralled to American politicians and probably paying them off, and certainly paid by cartels, remain exactly where they are. Because think about it, like in a situation where we had a closed border with Mexico, every time there was some massive explosion of violence in Mexico, there'd be a call for revolution or reform or whatever. But that doesn't happen because every single time something like that happens, oh, well, we'll just flee to the United States. We'll live in an elevated form of poverty in the US and basically be a servant class, basically glorified serfs in America. It repulsed me when I went over there, honestly. It was like, because here in America, they talk about keeping the border open in the name of compassion, and nothing could be further from the truth. They've killed more people with that compassion than they ever could have with just being callous assholes, honestly. So
Isn't that amazing how that's kind of a theme over the last few years is compassion. They like too much compassion can be a bad thing, you know. Goes back to the slippery slope of like, well, don't you want to be a good person? Well, yeah, of course I want to be a good person, but there's a certain point where like compassion can only go so far before you got to actually do something about it. Yeah.
It was interesting though, because we built houses for people, got to kind of talk with the people. Of course, it was a missions trip, so there was kind of, you know, services and stuff. But the main thing was, you know, actually meeting with the families. And one of the most heartbreaking moments the whole time was we're putting together this house, we're laying the foundation. I remember this vividly, like hammering the like wood frame that you know, pour the foundation into, hammering it down. And this family literally are living in a shack. Their house is built out of billboards that they pulled down and they literally just slapped together. That's their house. They crap in a hole behind it. And well, these people have nothing, less than nothing. And I'm hammering away, and all of a sudden I feel a tug on my shirt. And I turn around, and it's the little girl. The little girl's like, I don't know. She could have been like 4 or 5. I don't know. And she's got a plate with a tortilla on it. They made us food. They don't have anything, these people. They're amazing people, and you feel for them because you know they're like at some point, when does the argument pop up? Like, does Mexico have a right to not be a shit country? You know what I mean? Like, at what point do we actually advocate reform in that country rather than just exporting their entire labor market over here so Home Depot can have a few extra fucking workers?
That's rough. Are there any outside of the tortilla story? Do you have any stories that really resonate with you that really change your perspective on just everything? Because I feel that a lot of the people who are the loudest and complain in the United States have never seen anything outside of their own little bubble in the United States.
Yeah, and I saw it from both sides too. I mean, I was raised in South Phoenix, which is just this side of Tijuana. Put it this way, the neighbor across the street was trafficking drugs and illegals. She wound up getting in a gunfight with police and having to be gassed from her home. It was a big story out here back in the 90s.
Jesus.
So yeah, I got to see it from both sides. Here's the effects. Here's the ill effects on our side of the border. Here's the ill effects on that side of the border. If you can see those two effects and still advocate for open borders, I don't even know what to tell you.
Right. Mephisto's movie review says, I want to know, what does RazörFist think of the movie Pump Up the Volume with Christian Slater?
I caught it on TV back in the day. I loved it.
Travis came in and says, Michael Jackson gave a ring to a child. It has been verified by the person whom sold it to him that the child got to pick out which he liked. So even if you don't think he molested kids, he for sure groomed them.
I actually addressed this in 2 videos. It's actually not true. That ring, not only was that not true, but if you watch the documentary where they made that claim, you notice that the video footage featuring the ring is actually a pickup shot, meaning they filmed the interview and then months passed. He came back, put on the same outfit to pretend that it was the same interview. He actually bought that ring later. And that's been confirmed. So that's actually like one of the most obvious incongruities. And by the way, that same guy who made that claim is the same guy who claimed that he was assaulted in the train station at Neverland, right? And the problem, of course, is that he claims that Michael stopped talking to him after 1990 or whenever the fuck. And the Neverland train station hadn't even been built yet. It was built in like 93, 4, something like that. So it wasn't even built. So he was apparently assaulted in a building that didn't exist yet.
Chris
kinds of problems there.
Chris Benoit, this should be good, came in and says, hi, Razor, big fan. You're trying to bring back pulp. I would like to bring back old school parenting. Possible collab in the future. Chris Benoit, listen, do you know Chris Benoit? Do you know who that is?
I do.
Okay, then we're gonna let that one be. Nick Naylor says, Razor would recommend self-publishing or going through a publisher. I got one ready to go, but not sure on the marketing.
I'll get back to you on that because I've tried one. I've gone through a traditional publisher. And I don't have many complaints, although there were some issues on the last book with just logistically stuff beyond the publisher's control, really. But now with Ghost of the Badlands, we're going to be self-publishing. The guy, my collaborator, the artist who's doing magnificent work on it, he's going to be handling the fulfillment. So I don't really have experience with self-publishing yet, but I'm going to come this winter when we drop the comic itself. So,
dude, that's awesome. Love it. Love it. Lil Rash says, if a government had the ability to land on the moon, would they destroy all the technology and make no further development over it for 50 years? Sting came in and says, RazörFist, what is your favorite film of all time and favorite video game of all time? Thank you for being based and awesome.
Well, I did a whole video on my favorite movie of all time, and that's Blade Runner. I love that movie. And my favorite video game is Thief 2, The Metal Age. I love stealth games, and that's the best one ever.
Nice, nice. Iron Age
With
Media.
respect to Metal Gear Ben,
Oh man, that's a deep cut.
Oh yes.
Good old Metal Gear bid. Okay, we're gonna finish these up, then we'll circle back to all that craziness. There's Iron Age media says a lot of the Iron Age is also about people developing skills. Can't expect the next Lord of the Rings to appear from the ether in a single year. I'd happy send Craig the first 2 issues of Anvil.
Oh yeah, he's making a new this is a good example of what I was talking about. He's got his website Iron Age Media, but he's also started publishing an anthology magazine that has like short stories and comics and all kinds of stuff. It actually has a 10-page preview of Ghost of the Badlands in it. So, you know, it's cool. Even people are beginning to actually compile all of the Iron Age stuff and shout it out, which I think is one of the coolest developments in the whole movement, honestly.
That's great. Project Taco wants to know who would win in a rock paper. I guess that's supposed to be scissor match. Project Taco, you're about to find out.
All right.
It's 1, 2, go.
All right.
Okay. All right. 1, 2, shoot. All right. Ready?
Yep.
1, 2,
go.
Damn it!
I never win, so you like must really suck at rock paper scissors.
I am horrible at this ridiculous game of chance. It's ridiculous. Well, now you know Project Taco. Mick Double R says, "Hey, RazörFist, have you ever watched Gundam anime?"
Yeah, back in the day when it was on Toonami, I think I watched Gundam Wing. And what else did I watch? It was a shitty one. It was a not so good one. Was it Seed? There was something I watched years later that I wasn't a big fan of, but I liked Gundam Wing. Okay.
Did you get a chance to see the new one on Netflix, One Piece? The live action?
No, I haven't. I've heard it's supposed to be one of the best live action anime adaptations that's been made, which granted isn't a very high bar, but but if it's even watchable, then that's a development in and of itself.
Yeah, I'll say this. I don't know anything about anime. Right, I know like the only thing I know about anime is like Voltron, you know, from like 1980, right? But I've heard of One Piece, and I saw a review. I think IGN gave it like a 6 out of 10, and I was like, huh. But I thought, I don't know, I'd just give it a go. The trailer looked good on Netflix. It was awesome. I loved it. It was such a fun, like whimsical story of just like there's pirates and crazy. Physical abilities, and there's twists and turns, and I loved it. I can't wait for the next season.
Oh, cool.
Assuming it happens. So
right.
Highly recommended. Action Com says, Razor, has there been any pushback over Bill Cosby?
Not really. I mean, because I didn't take the position in my video that I thought he was innocent. I just thought he didn't receive a fair trial. Which obviously he was released from prison for that exact reason. So that's not exactly a crazy opinion. He was, for those who don't know, he did a deposition that was recorded under the understanding that he would not be prosecuted. That's the whole reason he recorded it, because it was for like insurance purposes. So the prosecutor had already looked into the allegations that the women had made and found that they didn't have any credibility. Like they weren't time and place, the timetable didn't fit and such, which is usually how these kind of accusations fall apart. And then he said to Bill Cosby, okay, now for the purposes of insurance, we're going to have to record a deposition. And so I'm not going to prosecute you, so let's record this now. And so this video was actually made under the understanding that it was completely private. It was just for insurance purposes. And then, of course, Me Too happened, and Hannibal Buress's comedy special and what have you. And they wound up actually illegally entering that deposition into evidence, which is why he was released from prison, because it was a massive constitutional violation. It was absolutely ridiculous. And it was really absurd because the prior prosecutor who had investigated the claims and found they were without merit was the political rival of the prosecutor in the case that wound up convicting Cosby. And the judge who presided over the case that convicted Bill Cosby was his political ally. So it was totally fucked. They brought the previous prosecutor in to testify to the fact that he had looked into the claims and found they were without merit. And he was treated as a hostile witness and kicked out of the courtroom. I mean, it was ridiculous. One of the accusers admitted to lying on the witness stand. That never made it to the media. It was just, yeah, I just don't think he received a fair trial. He may be guilty of the charges. I don't know, but he definitely didn't receive a fair trial.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I know you got to wrap. I know you got to move on. We're going to, you got to go, and I'm going to let you go, but I'm going to read this one last one from Evan. I'm going to read the rest of the super chats after Razor heads out. But let me just say this, man. Today's been kind of like a high level like interview, right? But I would love to do this again with you and more casually and stuff in the future, because there's so much we didn't even get a chance to touch on today.
We didn't even get into Starfield, for Christ's sake.
Didn't even touch it, which a reminder, if you guys are watching, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button, because tomorrow we'll have David Jaffe on, and he is a member of the Starfield bandwagon, and he loves his pronouns. So
he is the bandwagon, fuck's sake.
So make sure you guys are here for that. It should be a really interesting conversation. As Evan came in with the $27.99 super chat, says, I'll always remember the only time when you took off your glasses on camera. It was after Trump was elected, and you had a really serious moment. Was always curious to know what thoughts were going through your mind.
All I was thinking at the time was I was trying to think back to a time when I had seen the result of an election and thought it was going to end badly. Not with Obama, believe it or not. I didn't think the world was going to go to hell after Obama was elected or anything, but just in the past, previous election results, mostly at the local level or whatever, trying to think like, what would I want to hear from someone on the other side of the aisle that had a little bit more perspective to kind of mollify, because there was just this sense after Trump was elected, like, oh my God, Orange Hitler is president, right? All I wanted to do was extend the olive branch and be like, look, it's not the end of the world. He's not the maniac you were told. And if you believe that X, Y, and Z could have been lies from the media, and some of them were already at that point proven to be lies, maybe consider that some of the things that have been said about him are also lies, and that they were just meant to get you into a frenzy. I was already talking about like the political fight or flight a little bit at that juncture. Didn't really work out that way. People didn't really take to it that way, but I tried. I was mostly trying to calm people down. Really. That's honestly the whole reason I recorded that at the end of that video.
How did the extending the olive branch work out for you there? Probably not so well.
People did respond to it. Absolutely. But dude, when the media are banging the Orange Hitler drum dawn to goddamn dusk, I mean, what the fuck? One random dude talking on the internet is not going to drown that out.
Well, shit, man. Like I said, I didn't even scratch the surface, man. We talked so high level stuff today, but I know you got to go. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to read the rest of these super chats here in a minute, but thank you, dude, for popping on. I feel like we just, I can't wait to do this again. This is going to be really, really fun. And
absolutely, I'll pop on anytime.
I love it, man. You're a good dude. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
All right. Godspeed, man. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you, brother. For sure. There he goes. The man y'all wanted to see, RazörFist. Like I said, barely got to scratch the surface with him. And it's always fun to hear perspectives. And he's always has hot takes, which I appreciate. Travis, thank you so much for putting that link. We'll check it out later. Nick MCRR says, asking his opinion on Baby Metal. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to get to that. Had a little time crunch. Do me a favor, guys. If you haven't, hit the subscribe button. Come back tomorrow and watch our interview with David Jaffe. It should be a really interesting conversation. Evan says, cheers from Montreal, Razor. Thanks for bringing attention to some awesome stuff I found in Bandis. Yeah. Hey, thanks. Appreciate that. Thanks, Evan. You're my boy. Project Tonka says, Benoit tried to own RazörFist, mission failed. Okay, thank you. Hinoshi says, Razor, have you played Blasphemous? I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to get to that. Raven wants to know, says, hey, Razor, what did you think of Doken's new single, The Fugitive, and why does Dan Dawkins impersonate Lemmy? Talking about from Motorhead. Thank you, Raven. Once again, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to get to these on a time crunch today. Emperor says, speaking of Lord of the Rings, one of my favorite things to do is to reply to fake fans and fake fans and Rings of Power fans on Twitter with Tolkien quotes on the nature of evil and a picture of him smoking a pipe. Thank you. Appreciate that. Sal says, here's my small conspiracy theory of gaming. Most Western game developers used Anita Sarkeesian as a scapegoat to push far-left ideology in games. Once they're done using her for years, they tossed her aside. It's why she went broke. Interesting, Sal. Wait, thank you very much for the 5 gifted memberships to the channel. Massive, huge. And Grundy says, Razor, what do you think of Mario RPG, the Mario RPG remake? I love your old gaming videos and remembered your fondness for the SNES. Grundy, I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to get to those. But greatly appreciate all your support today, guys. The gifted memberships, the super chats, the direct donations, those are huge. We try to do an interview every Thursday here on the channel. We're just going back to back as it fit David Jaffe's schedule. I encourage you guys to, once again, hit the subscribe button, the thumbs up button. We will certainly clip this down into smaller, more digestible clips that'll be on the channel, which you'll be able to find those. Maybe not this week or this next week, but they will eventually hit the channel for sure. So Matthew says, what should happen to Square Enix after it was announced they lost $2 billion? Some say Sony should buy them, but the partnership led to mediocrity. The games made outside of Sony are better. Ah, yes. You know, that was interesting. I haven't had a chance to really dig into that news yet. But the fact that they lost $2 billion after the latest Final Fantasy game is amazing. You know, doing the math on the sales of a game like there was a game we looked at earlier, Luigi's Mansion. I looked at that during the Nintendo Direct. Luigi's Mansion 3 made $840 million, right? That was the gross sales of that game. That's insane. $840 million, $1 billion for one game. So, you know, you would like to, and I would like to think that Final Fantasy sold more games. I don't know. Supposedly it has a bigger audience than Luigi's Mansion, but what should happen to them? I don't know, man. I think they should continue to grind it out, give it one more go, and maybe they truly do have one more Final Fantasy. Because remember, that was the original idea behind Final Fantasy, was it was going to be the last game. It just turned out to be a hit. Travis says the link is MJ shopping for Wade Rosen for Ring. All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Appreciate you guys. This is awesome. And thanks for popping in. I'll be live over on the Side Scrollers Plays channel. It's a separate channel from this one over on YouTube. I want you guys to come over and join me over there. Today we're listening to music. We're listening to 8-bit video game music. The audio shows are some of my favorite, which is music appreciation. So come on over and join me over there. It's at Side Scrollers Plays over on YouTube. Subscribe to that channel. Join me over there when we just sit back. We listen to old school 8-bit music or chip tunes today. Every week has a different theme. I'd love for you guys to join me. I'll be live over on Rumble at rumble.com/sidescrollers. And man, we didn't even get a chance to talk about like Friday Night Tights or anything. Oh, I barely got to touch the surface. If you guys do enjoy this, head over to Patreon and support us over there. We're going to try to make a better effort over on Patreon. Thanks so much for the likes and spreading the word. Appreciate you guys. Remember, people are going to try to keep you down. Don't let them. You guys got a goal. Go get it. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye-bye.